Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Van Holtz, back again with another E-Commerce Conversations. Hope all is going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the Internet from me, Lea with Pig of the Month Barbecue. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. I'm getting hungry just thinking about your business and what you guys do. But why don't you give our listeners a quick rundown of what Pig of the Month Barbecue is?
Yeah, sure. So we do direct-to-consumer barbecue. So we do all the hard work of the barbecue. We smoke the brisket for 14 hours. We do the ribs for, 4 to 6. We do all that. And we ship you perfectly cooked barbecue straight to your door. So you can always have some in your freezer when you're ready and you have that undefinable craving for some tearing into some barbecue.
Now, I'm here in Texas and barbecue is brisket. But are you guys like, pulled pork and pork only, or?
We do a little bit of everything. So we started out with just ribs and now we do brisket, pulled pork, corned beef. We have like 50 different flavors of bacon, bacon jam. And then we also source really good organic free range meats. So like strip steaks, fillets, pork tenderloins, all that kind of stuff.
I can only imagine how friggin' complex this business model is. Like, I would not want to touch this business with a 10-foot pole.
100% no. If I was at 22 when I started this over a decade ago and I had no idea what I was getting into, I would not be in this business right now.
So, I mean, just off the top of my head, like, I assume you have to ship it in like frozen containers, or?
We use styrofoam, and that kind of creates its own issues too, just with sustainability stuff and trying to get away from that, but also being able to still use dry ice to keep things at a certain temperature so they are safe on arrival.
Yeah. And then you've got to have really good notifications with your customers for when things are going to arrive so it doesn't sit on people's porches.
Oh, yeah. And there's always one person every single Christmas that is given the box as a gift, and then they email us and it arrives like, 2 weeks before Christmas, and they just are told to put it under their tree. And they're like, well, we just opened up and it's a box full of stinky foul meat. And I'm like, what do you mean? It arrived on the 12th. Why did you just open it? And they're like, well, it's been sitting under the tree. It's for Christmas.
Oh my
and
God.
I'm constantly mind blown.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, how did you get the idea to sell meat over the internet?
Yeah. So my background is in finance, which I hated, and I would do anything to get out of. So I was, one, looking for the opportunity. And then two, when I had moved back to my hometown of Dayton, Ohio, my dad has always just been a huge rib lover. And so I had gone to a place in Memphis that ships them on the internet and ordered it for Father's Day. And then they came and they were just okay. And this was like 2010. So this wasn't really a time when a lot of people were shipping food on the internet quite yet. And it wasn't really normal. You kind of just had the big guys like Omaha Steaks or Harry and David doing it. And my dad kind of just turned to me and said, I think there's an opportunity here. I think you should really explore this. And I didn't have a better idea. So I said, sure, sounds good. I'll give it a go.
Yeah. And well, you and I share the similar like loathe of the finance industry. I used to be a financial advisor in a past life, which.
Isn't it funny to think that we, like, just looking at us on the screen right now, like, I can't imagine either of us in that world.
Yeah, I grow a beard out and you start selling some bacon. Making bacon and selling bacon. I guess that's your tagline, huh?
Yeah.
So how does that operational supply chain look like as well? Are you guys, manufacturing the product as well, sourcing the ingredients, or do you work with, restaurants and other suppliers to get your product?
I could never find somebody who made things just the way I wanted them. Like when I taste a rib, like when you eat barbecue, like let's say you're getting into some ribs or some brisket, what makes it good to you?
Fall off the bone, right?
But like not quite fall off the bone. Like I don't want it to look like it's boiled. Like
Right.
I shouldn't be like, if I pick it up, it should still stick on the bone,
Right.
So I want it to have a little bit of crust, but I still want it to be juicy and tender on the inside. And the only way we found to do it was to do it the hard way. So we custom fabricated a giant smoker that has a rotisserie in it. So it grills and smokes at the same time. And we do everything here in this warehouse and then we ship it out at the back dock.
How long do you keep that product? Is there like I subscribe to a coffee subscription, and then they roast it and then they send it out. So it's like pretty fresh stuff. Is it a similar business model to that, or are you able to for lack of better terms, like warehouse your product?
We try not to warehouse more than like 30 days worth, just because freezer space becomes an issue and freezers are very expensive to run. But yeah, in general, we keep about 2 weeks of stock at any given point. We just have so many items at this point that we have extensive amounts of freezer space. And it's a lot of items to make all the time.
Yeah, I feel like, in today's environment, so many consumers are also becoming more aware of the supply chains of the foods that they're getting. Have you noticed that with your customers demanding, like free range pork or, like organic, sustainably harvested, or I don't know the terms in the industry, but
they change all the time and some of them don't mean anything. So I wouldn't worry about it. Sustainability and sourcing and quality is a big thing. And I was one of the few ones who, when I started 10 years ago, I absolutely required everything to be organic, free range, humanely raised. Like I wanted to go to the farms that we were sourcing the product from, and I wanted to see what kind of practices they were using. Are you treating your animals well? Do they have, clean food, clean water, space to walk around in? I was always one of those crunchy people that believed that in quality of food over quantity.
Yeah. And how does that scale? Because I would imagine like once you get to a certain point, like it's harder and harder to find the amount of stock you need.
Yeah, we've had to expand because a lot of the farmers also just aren't looking to do it to that next scale. So you kind of max out their supply and they're like, we cannot keep going with the level of quality and the skills we're doing to practice this kind of farming at any larger, because then we're just going to go to large scale agriculture, which is what we're trying to avoid. So instead of having, working with partners that are scaling, we just find more partners. And luckily there has been quite a few people that are interested in getting into the sustainably raising meat business, I guess.
One of my guests on the show, Matt Reynolds, has this business called Barbell Logic. And his whole thing is essentially building a coaching platform, and he has a school with how to train people on how to become coaches, and then ultimately a lot of them will become coaches for his companies. And I wonder, like, has that been something that you've contemplated, like how to sustainably raise livestock to kind of fit like the better practices for what consumers are wanting, and then just like sell this program to farmers and future farmers?
That's a super interesting idea. I think because I didn't ever have any firsthand experience with it, I didn't approach it from that end. And instead, we did it from the other end, where we also now offer third-party perishable shipping for other companies who don't quite have the scale or who want private labeled products. So we kind of hit it on the other side. But I'm interested in that idea just because I think for the social good of it, even by itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, it's like this podcast. There's just so much to learn from other people who have done it, and to see where they've done it, where you might be able to shorten that time frame for ramping up. Speaking of like growing, how have you guys been able to grow? Like, how do you reach out to your audience? And
yeah, we got lucky at first. I didn't have any money. It was all self-funded. So I really banked on getting some good press hits. So we did. We did the whole Good Morning America thing. We did the Today Show. We did Rachel Ray. So we did like a bunch of big press at first. And I was smart enough back then, thank goodness, that I collected their email addresses. And I was big on email marketing from the start. And that's kind of always been our main driver. Email marketing. Now SMS is a big piece. We're getting back into direct mail just because post iOS 14 and ads not really working. We found really good returns right now with direct mail.
Okay. So a couple of things I want to ask about that. One, how do you just get on to Good Morning America? And like, it seems like a lot of work, and you just like, oh yeah, we just did that. Like, what does that look like? How does that happen?
It was a lot of work. I specifically sought out a PR person who had gotten a similar company in like a different vertical onto Good Morning America. And I was like, this is all I want. Like, that we're going to pay you for 3 months. And like, this is literally all we want. So if you can make that happen, and she just happened to be able to do it. And then once you get that first big press in, it's a lot easier to go ahead and get the rest of them, I think.
Yeah. So the strategy was Good Morning America from the get-go, and then
Yeah. I think it's such a different landscape now. I think because you have so many different small businesses and so many different VC backed ones that are just like growth, 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 growth. It's a lot harder to make the things that worked a decade ago still work.
yeah. So like you're starting a business over again today, that would not be your strategy because you'd essentially be blowing money into the wind.
Yeah. And I definitely wouldn't have started this business. It's really expensive and time intensive to get into now that I realize it, and regulation heavy.
I would say that would be another thing that I want to touch is just like the dealing with the government over just the way governments do things.
It sucks. It's not fun. That's all I can say about it. There's just so many regulations. They change all the time. You're constantly dealing with like people just throwing stuff at you, and like you have to comply or you just get shut down. And it's not awesome. There definitely needs to be a better way to handle it.
Yeah. Are they doing like, random audits and coming into your place and like?
So if you're USDA, so if you're actually doing the butchering on site, you would have an inspector every single day. So for the first 5-6 years of our business, we did that, and that sucks.
God, every day you got some government man.
Every single day. Yeah. And then like you have to work within their specific hours. So they work like 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. And if you work outside of those hours, you have to pay overtime to the inspectors. Like there's so much red tape with that whole thing. So we moved that off, and now we just get the meat from approved USDA vendors. And so we get like randomly inspected now, but it's not quite as intense as USDA levels.
The other thing that I wanted to follow up with is you talked about moving to direct mail and you're finding success with that. Mm-hmm. Walk me through how you're building out a direct mail campaign. Is this for customer acquisition or is it more retention of your customers?
We've been using it more for acquisition. We've been doing it with like joint venture partners and kind of cross promoting to each other's customer lists and, creating pretty irresistible offers. And we use, I think it's called Lifetimely.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Lifetimely. They kind of automate the whole sending of the material process for us. But randomly, we've seen up to like 6x returns on that, which is really good for any channel right now.
What does the creative look like? Is it a postcard? Is it like a magazine?
So we've tested a postcard, like kind of like a trifold out thing. We've done like a small booklet with just different offerings. It kind of depends. I think segmentation has been really key, and a lot of it is trial and error and like constant iterations. So we do a lot of little tests of like 500 to 1,000 people at a time and just like test them one against each other and just continually test until we don't do any large mailings until we've gotten to a certain rate of return.
So what are some of the call to actions that you find have been successful, and which ones were flops that maybe you thought were going to be home runs?
Free items with like a purchase amount have been really successful. So it's not even like they're high or anything, but like we've done free bottles of sauce, some bacon caramels. We've done bacon jam with any purchase over $25. Those have been highly successful. We found that percentage off just is a complete flop. Like people, I think, are bombarded with those offers all the time. So it has to be something a little bit more creative and targeted to them. Dollar amounts usually do pretty well too. Like if you offer like $20 on your first order or some sort of store credit or something for them to try you, those have worked really well too.
So when you do like a free sauce, do you really hype up that sauce and get people like wanting that? Like almost they buy the meat for the sauce, or?
Yeah, we've even done like little packets that we attach with like a glue dot in this little packet thing. It's expensive, but it converts incredibly well. Giving people a taste of something just really does it. And we've also done things like, you can do those custom card decks. We do one as an upsell for our post-purchase where it's like a bunch of grilling tips and recipes and stuff in like a card deck. So we'll take a couple of those cards and we'll put them in our direct mail piece or attach them to our direct mail piece and send them out. And for some reason, those do really well. One of them is like a recipe that includes something that we sell.
How much, like a per unit price point for the people listening, if they're going to get it into direct mail? Is this like 50 cents an address you're sending to, or like what are the costs that they should be budgeting?
It gets a little bit less. We aim to hit about like between 35 and 65, depending on weight. Okay. So if we're including like something in there or not.
And that will include postage as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, 35 to 65. So 40 cents. you're doing 1,000 of them, that's $400. And then you'll see like a 6X return on that. You'll see it drive $2,400.
Not every time, but
Right.
in general, 4 to 6X is what we've seen pretty much across the board.
You talked about your segmentation. What is a strategy with that? Are you giving your customer data list and they're finding other people like your customers, or is it very like zip code driven?
It's been really zip code driven right now. There's a couple companies that will take your list and like analyze it for demographics and go further out so that you can actually have better data so that you can target specific household incomes, specific education levels. Sometimes we've targeted by weather because like grilling season in different parts of the country lasts different amounts of time. We found that like near the holidays, it's a big one in the first like 4 to 6 week lead up to like Christmas, Valentine's Day, Super Bowl. Like those are really great. Father's Day upcoming.
Yeah. So for those listening, I know of Experian off the top of my head that will do that. Pretty much like the credit card agencies, they're collecting all the data on you. It's
Oh, for sure.
If you're a privacy person, like you're going
It's
to start
alarming.
vomit. Yeah, you're going to vomit in your mouth. It is not going to be really comforting knowing all the information they have on you. But
It's pretty crazy. Yeah, you can go really, really detailed. And like even the companies themselves, they'll like offer that as an add-on service. Yeah, it's crazy.
there's another company who one of my buddies, Drew, is part of, is called like Post Pilot, which is essentially, converting your email into direct mail, for lack of a better term. So it's more of like post-purchase kind of remarketing. For all the people
That's
who
cool.
don't accept email, they allow you to build automated campaigns for that and kind of keep that flow going. So I haven't used it. I just talked to him yesterday though. So he was just telling me a little bit about it.
I think that's really cool.
I'm pretty bullish on direct mail as well, but I would imagine your AOV is probably a little bit higher than ours.
What is your AOV?
It's probably about $65 right now.
So ours is about double.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's still comforting to know, like, if we're at 65, you're at 120 and you're driving, 4 to 6X, that means we could probably at worst see 2 to 3X with the right offer.
Well, and you guys have most people on a subscription, correct?
No, we have less than 10%. So very small
Oh.
percentage. Yeah. We're pretty dumb entrepreneurs here at Beard Brand. So it's not hard for me to find smarter guests than me on the show.
Oh man, I'm in a couple masterminds. Have you done this yet?
Yeah, well, I mean, you and I share a mutual friend, Antonio Centeno, who's also been on the show, and he's very well connected. But I'm in one mastermind right now, but they're fun.
They're fun, and they're definitely places where I go once a week and I feel like the dumbest person in the room. So at least I know I'm in the right place.
Well, I mean, I think that's such a great thing because you just start learning so much when you're just exposed to things that you're not familiar with. What was your initiation into direct mail? Obviously, you talked about Facebook tanking. We've seen the same thing, and that's kind of opened up our eyes. Were you considering direct mail against other channels like TV, radio?
I haven't touched any of those. Have you guys done anything? Have you found that podcasts, TV, radio, more traditional media have performed well?
We've historically been like an organic channel. So we grow a lot through our YouTube channels and then our blog. And then, of course, try to get them into our email flow. And we have a lot of really good content on our email flows as well. When we killed our Facebook ad spend in November, we shifted our focus into affiliate marketing, but more specifically YouTubers. We're trying to build a relationship with YouTubers. So we have seen some initial wins with some YouTubers, but I really think it's finding that right partner and making sure your value to them is also there as well.
Are you going more micro or larger or testing a mix? Because I've heard this is our next avenue that we're about to launch, dealing with affiliates and influencers and whatnot. And I just feel very unsure about who's going to actually end up converting.
Yeah, I had a previous show with Paul, BK Beauty, and that's been a big thing. He has about 25 creators that produce content pretty regularly for him. And it's driving, 7 figures of revenue. But I think it's the one creator that's really that right fit. And they did a joint collaboration and so it's almost like you got to throw a dart against a dartboard to see what hits. Some creators, your product will really resonate with their audience, and some maybe flops. Another guy who's been on my show, Sean Frank of Ridge Wallet, they do it a different way. They do sponsored content with pretty much any creator out there. So they're just if you have a video that's not being sponsored, let Ridge fill that gap. It's not going to be the highest rates, but it's always going to be available and I'll always do it. It's kind of their strategy. And they've found a lot of success with that. So like Paul's doing this, like build relationships with people and like really get that tight, like bond between the brand and the creator. And then Sean is doing just like spray to everybody. Doesn't matter. Doesn't care. I don't care what kind of content you produce. It could be controversial. You could be getting banned. It doesn't matter. So they both work. And then Ridge is, like doing tens of millions of dollars. So clearly Sean's is, like if growth at all costs, I would probably lean toward that way. But
it was just never my thing. I didn't want growth at all costs ever. I wanted lifestyle.
I don't think you can if you really care about the product for your industry. Like if you had super rapid growth, like you just couldn't get the inventory. What do you do? I mean, I think of barbecue here in Texas, and we've got Franklin's, and it's like, here's what I can do for the day. Once we're out, we're out.
And he found other ways to monetize. He's got the cookbook. I think he has a YouTube channel. I think he does like a grilling boot camp or something where like you can like learn from him and how to barbecue. And he does like I think he even has a master class.
Yeah. I've gotten ads on it. So is that where you think, I guess you kind of talked about how you're spending your business and helping other people with perishable goods and the distribution of that. Do you feel like that is going to be the direction of your company, more of like an operational company, or do you think you'll always be customer facing?
I think both. It was really interesting because that organically happened. I had a customer who does Bacon of the Month Club as well. And they were like, hey, like we don't make any of our products. Like we'd like you to private label and ship it. And it really led to some growth where we ship a bunch of their other products now too. And then that just led to more and more businesses coming by word of mouth. So it was never anything that I intentionally did, but there's huge opportunities there, like logistics, warehousing, shipping, 3PLs, like especially if somebody can really nail down the perishable piece of it and be able to house and ship that effectively, man, there's a huge demand for it. It won't be one that I'll be filling because we've basically filled out our warehouse and I'm good. But if anyone's looking to start a business, I would get into logistics.
Well, it's funny you say that. I think there's a ton of 3PLs out there, and almost every e-commerce person wants to blow their brains out when they talk about dealing with their 3PL. We have a good relationship with ours, but it took a few different partners to get to this. And I do think what you talked about is the answer for anyone who's listening, is like niche down, like really understand and be like, hey, we're in the perishable goods. This is what we focus on. Hey, we're in the, the beauty and skincare products. We know your products. We know what kind of things to work out for, hey, we're in the apparel. We handle returns, like really understand your e-commerce company's niche and own it. I think it would be really hard to be a generalist because you'll just be running around like crazy trying to understand all these different businesses and how they work.
Well, and if you're scaling at any cost, like you're pissing off every single customer you have, especially in like 3PL world. So like, there's no way that you could handle perishables in the same space that you could like apparel. They're so different of a business, requires so many different components and a whole different setup, even in the line and the pick pack. I don't know how like you have like a ship Bob who's like trying to do both. And it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, to each their own. As some people just are drawn to businesses that are hard. Am I right, Leah?
Point taken.
You mentioned that you're collaborating with joint ventures. What is that?
So we work with other companies who are complementary products. Like we do a bunch with like different grilling companies, stores who sell grills and patio stores, cigar companies, wine companies, places that have like the target customer we have and we're not actively competing with.
Okay, so these are just like friendly, informal relationships that you have. The owners or the head of marketing.
We make the contact and then we start a program. We usually start with one specific thing. Like, for instance, on this one company, it's actually in Austin. It's like a barbecue grill store. And we do a different gift with purchase for everyone who buys grills of a certain specific type that month. So for like April, it will be anyone who does like a blacktop, flat top kind of grill. We'll be sending them a bacon gift and it's like co-branded with us and the other company. And it's kind of a fun little thing for us to acquire a new customer. We still make money because they build the cost of the package into the cost of the grill. And it really helps lengthen the relationship with their customer because they get that next touch point where it's like, wow, this guy not only gave us a grill, but the food to really get started to use it. And yeah.
We've done a little bit of that, but it seems like really hard to reach out, get to the right person and kind of convince them. Are you pitching the idea and doing all that burden, or do you say, hey, we share a similar audience, let's figure out how to come up with a cool collaboration?
I do the second, the latter. And I do it definitely smaller to mid-sized companies. Like we're aiming for people who have revenue, well under $5 million a year. It's much easier then to get to the right person, and there's not a lot of red tape between you and that person. And you can just sit down and say, like, these are some things that have worked for us in the past. Like, I think this is really cool thing that you guys do. What's your goals for the next quarter? And these are our goals. And this is where I think we could maybe like work together.
What kind of time frames do you get for that? Because I just feel like when you get a lot of, no pun intended, but when you get a lot of cooks in the kitchen, things slow down and drama happens, and like the end product never ends up being as cool as it could be if you're sole focused on it.
Yeah, I feel you. I tend to give it, so like we will have started one in February and it's launching in April, for instance. And I make sure like it's just for the first launch, it's like me and the owner, and we're the only two kind of working on it and like project managing it as like a personal project. And then once you get going, you can roll into the rest of your staff and kind of keep it going. But you got to make sure that first one's a success, or else like why put all that work into it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with collaborations, they can be as simple as, hey, let's do a giveaway. And there's very little work, just kind of get your toes wet, all the way to like custom products and kits, which end up being huge amounts of work.
Huge amounts of work, sometimes for nothing.
Yeah. Yes.
I think we did one time and it maybe sold like 100 units. And I was like, I mean, this was 3 months of my life.
Yeah. We did one with Pit Viper, which makes these kind of like bro-y glasses. And as an entrepreneur, you always have these like big visions of this cool collaboration you're going to do. But they were just so like underwater with their operations at the moment. We're like, look, we'll just buy 12 of these glasses and build our own little kit, Yeah. And that was the extent of the collaboration. So they weren't even like, I think they helped promote it a little bit on their channel and stuff like that. But it was super simple, and it was a lot of fun. It was like, obviously our company is not going to be made on these glasses, but it gives that energy that you talked about where, oh, here's something new and they're cool. Like, I like this brand, I like your brand, and now they've come together. And
you make that relationship, and sometimes you don't know when it's going to like come down the line, and like they'll come back once their operations are maybe like more square and say like, hey, we actually want to try this thing. And maybe the next time it will end up being a bestseller, but
After we stop recording, I got to connect you with All Things Barbecue. I don't know if you know the team over there, but they're YouTube creators and they make grills as well. So
I've heard so many things. Like, so you're like the fifth person this week that tells me that I need to check out their YouTube.
Okay. Well, I know one of the founders. I don't know if he's still with the company or not. He might be working on a side project, but yeah, I'll get you connected with them, and then, make
That's
magic
awesome.
happen.
Thank you.
Make meat better. So people get your meat, they stick it on the grill and they heat it up that way, or
you can do a grill, you can do microwave, you can do oven, you can do crock pot, air fryer. You can kind of do anything at this point.
What's the best way?
I actually prefer microwave for the ribs.
Oh, really?
I know it's like sacrilege. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like,
people are like right now, like crying over their grills, just listening to this. But yeah, it keeps it like moist. There's something about it, like keeping it super, super moist, considering it's already been smoked once. I don't think it needs that second smoke.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, where can people find you, support you, buy some meat?
Yeah. Come check us out at pigofthemonth.com. I'm on Instagram at pigofthemonth. Say hello. And yeah, you guys can even reach out to me direct, Lea at pigofthemonth.com, LEA, if you guys have any business interesting collaborations that you'd like to try out.
Sweet. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, understanding a little bit about the headaches that you go through, and I will quickly forget them because I want none of it in my life.
Good for you.
This has been another e-commerce conversations. Hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Cheers and keep on growing.